This Week in History with Mike and Will. I'm Mike.
I'm Will.
And it's This Week in History.
Ba-dum.
If you're just joining us for the first time, where you been? But if
We've
not,
done like 60 episodes now.
if you are, though, here's how the game goes. Will takes an event that took place this day in history. This Week in History.
Yep.
That's right. The name of the show is This Week in History.
Yep.
Then he does some research, and then he's got 1 hour to explain that event to me.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. And this week's event is
Macbeth.
not an event, just a
man.
person.
Well, so for those who don't know, Mike and I do theater stuff, and we just did a production of Macbeth. And
That's true.
So I thought it would be important and relevant to talk about the subject of that play. So that's why I decided to do it. Technically, we were supposed to do this one last week, but we were rehearsing and doing other things, so we didn't have a chance to. That's fine.
The folks watching this don't
They don't know. They don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care.
Anyway, Will, you got 1 hour. Ready?
I'm ready, Mike.
Set?
Go. All right. Macbeth at Macfinley.
Are we going to do this the whole show?
No, but it's Macbeth at Macfinley.
Okay.
You have to say it with the accent. You just cannot say it. Or just Macbeth McFinley. So Mac means like child of, son of.
Mac does.
Mac does.
Mac the knife.
Yes, Mac the knife.
Son
So
of
he's
the
the son of the
knife.
knife. So Macbeth, actually, the name, because it has Mac in it, means son of something.
Beth.
And what it means is life, son of life.
Huh.
So Beth is life. It's
kind
also
of ironic.
thought to be kind of meaning righteous. It's another way of putting it. And he was born, nobody really knows exactly, but he was born.
Somewhere after 900.
Somewhere after, 900. I think
And before 1200.
The guess is like around 1000.
Okay.
It's about the right time.
I think someone should have wrote that down.
They really should have. But he wasn't supposed to be as famous as he became.
Oh.
He was the grandson of Malcolm II of Scotland, who was a king at the time. He is cousin to a fellow named Duncan, who would eventually become King of Scotland.
Okay.
So that's his relation. Now, this is going to be hard to pronounce. But
Is it in Scottish?
these are all Scottish names.
All right.
So Macbeth's dad was Finlay. It's like Finlay. It's how it's spelt. But we're going to Anglicanize as much of this as we can
Finlay.
because it's hard to say, and I don't want to butcher the Scottish language because
You
they
don't want
will
to
get mad and they will beat my.
Don't want Scots mad at you.
You really don't. So Finlay was what was called the Mormaer, which is like a duke. It's a powerful lord.
Okay. More mare.
Yeah, they are
He's got more horses.
more hair, more mayors of, he's got the most mayors.
Okay.
But the Mormaer is kind of like a higher noble, not quite a duke, but I haven't written down what that exactly is, but maybe I should have put it right at the top. But in Scotland, it's basically you are the rank just under king. Like there's the king runs everything, and then the Mormaers kind of go and do whatever they want.
Okay. Yeah.
The region that he was the Mormaer of is Moray. Mormaer.
That's Amore.
It's a Moray. Moray is kind of a removed chunk of Scotland in that it's kind of surrounded by mountains and it's hard to get to. So whoever runs Moray is just kind of the boss.
Okay.
They don't really have to listen to the
So
king.
it's a removed chunk of Scotland, which in Scotland is a removed chunk of
England. Yeah, Britain, but yeah,
Right.
it's hard to get to Scotland, and then this is a harder to get to part of Scotland.
Great.
Yes.
Sounds nice.
It's probably pretty nice, actually. Just very wet and cold most of the time.
Well, that sounds lovely.
I like that. Some people like that. Other people like to go to, the beach.
Mm-hmm.
They have beaches in Scotland. Just probably shouldn't swim there because they're cold. Maybe. So anyway, Finlay is very powerful, and he is kind of a rival to Malcolm II.
Okay.
In that he's not really controllable, and he kind of does things his own way.
Rebel.
Now, sometime throughout, we don't, like I said, we don't know much about Macbeth's life, but his father was this powerful man, and a fellow named Gil Congan Mac Mail Brigty. Yep. So,
Gil?
Gil.
All right. Gil.
It's Gille. So Gil And Gil does not like Finley at all.
Okay.
He and his brother, Malcolm, but we're gonna call him Male because there are 3 other Malcolms. In this.
Okay.
There are 2 other Malcolms for sure in this story. I think there's a third somewhere too, and so we'll call him Male. Male. So Male and Gil decide they don't want Finley to rule over this area anymore.
Chunk of Scotland. All right.
So they decide to kill him.
No talking to him? Just
Yes.
All right.
He's
Let
their,
my sword be my voice.
and here's the thing: he's their uncle.
Oh.
So they murder their uncle.
Yeah, not everyone loves their uncle.
But they make the mistake of not finishing off the bloodline. They kill him.
To kill him.
But Macbeth escapes.
Oh.
Now, Macbeth knows these guys. They're his cousins, and they murdered his dad. So he's not too pleased about it.
Not too happy.
Gil is married to a woman named Gruach. Yep. Gruoch. Gruoch. The CH has a sound. And this becomes important. She's a very important part of our story.
Okay.
So Gil is married to her. Male dies in. Now this is in 1020 when they kill everybody. Male becomes the mayor. He's the boss now.
Okay.
Because I think he's the elder brother. Well, then he dies in 1029, and then Gil takes over. It is thought that Gil maybe killed Malcolm II's favorite brother, his younger brother. Like he loved this guy, and he was assassinated. So this family they're murdering everybody. The Melbritis are just kind of killing folk.
And is this an easy thing to do? I mean, are they
Not
just...
really. You don't have...
And these are assassinations. It's not like a war.
No, you're right. This isn't in battle. So they're sending knifemen basically into these people's homes and murdering them, or arranging accidents, or setting things up. It's very problematic though. And people always try to paint Scotland as kind of this backwater where it's just a bunch of savages, burning each other's houses down and stuff. This is the kind of political stuff that happens throughout the rest of Europe. So they're just as high-end politically, and they're just as prone to backroom deals and assassinations and things like that. These aren't any more savage or primal than their neighbors.
Scottish murderers, just like you.
Yep, exactly. They have the right to, kill people in a fancy, nice way. They don't just go and hit you with an axe.
Not just for the rich people?
Yeah, right.
Anyone can kill people.
These also happen to be rich people.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the rest of Scotland is just like the rest of France or England or Ireland, where the peasants are just peasants and they're minding their own business, and the kings keep killing each other, and the lords keep killing each other, and every so often there's a war and the peasants have to fight in it. But
I'm sure the peasants have daily trials and tribulations they go through.
Totally. Compared to nowadays, yeah, especially. But they have the
There's drama within the village, surely.
Probably. But they have a very much, meet the new boss, same as the old boss kind of a view on things. It's, as long as somebody's not increasing their taxes horribly or just rampaging through their towns, there's not this... I mean, it depends, though. Obviously, if you have a really good leader, the people are very loyal to them, and they will fight for them, or they will risk a lot more, and they're willing to do a lot more for those folks.
If not, just back to the tape mines, where they mine the Scotch tape.
I'm going to leave now.
Well, we've hardly begun.
I know. I'm done now. No, I'm done. All right. So, Gil is not a nice man.
Yeah, he killed people.
He's a murderer.
Yeah.
He's arranged murders. He killed Malcolm's brother, and he killed Macbeth's father.
Yeah.
So there's some bad blood. Now, at some point in 1029, Gil is in his great hall inside his castle.
Nice hall.
It's big.
Oh, great hall.
With 50 of his retainers, soldiers, not teeth.
No.
Things.
That's a lot of retainers.
That's a lot of retainers. That's too many.
Keep teeth straight.
So he's hanging out with his guys.
Yep, having some mead.
And somebody barred the doors and set the building on fire.
Oh, no.
He and his 50 men cooked.
No.
All of them died. There are two suspects.
What the fire marshal have to say about that?
He was like, this was a bad idea.
Should have had 2 exits.
Well, he was probably one of the retainers who got cooked.
Oh. This is a bad idea.
This is not great. I should not be in this building right now. There's no windows. This is terrible. There are two possible suspects.
Yeah.
Malcolm.
And lightning.
There are three possible suspects. There's Lightning, Malcolm, and Macbeth.
Yeah.
The most likely candidate is Macbeth. He had to wait a long... Now, this is...
Like he himself was there?
He might have actually gone and done it. Malcolm would not have. He's a king. He doesn't have to do that. But Macbeth has the most to gain by this guy dying.
Is this a match I see before me? Flames flickering towards my hand?
It could also have been a team up. Because Malcolm is Macbeth's grandpa.
Okay.
And his son was murdered by these guys.
Yeah.
But these guys are they're all family.
Yeah.
They're all related.
But what better family bonding thing than
but
you and Grandpa, you and Pop burning down a
Pop
building.
killing
you
your
and
uncle.
Pop doing arson.
Killing one of his second cousins once removed or whatever. Yeah. Well,
Nice.
Don't kill the king's favorite son.
It's good to keep families together.
Yep. I think the family that slays together stays together.
Sure.
That's what I've always been told. So there are a couple options, what we've got. But the most likely is it was Macbeth because he had the most to gain by doing this. He gets basically his throne back.
Yeah.
Because a Mormaer is almost considered a king. They're very powerful. Now, when he kills Gil, he gets his stuff, including his wife. This is a rule of the time. It's basically you have to decide what to do with the widow.
Well, yeah,
you marry him, or you kill him, or you give him to somebody else. Being a widow's a rough gig.
Yeah, I bet.
They get married, and he actually adopts her son, which is pretty cool.
I guess. It's nice.
His name is Lulach. So Gurach and Lulach. So Gru and Lu.
Yeah.
Gru and Lu. But this is a very weird thing for the time.
Sure.
To adopt the child of the guy who killed your father, that's really weird.
That argument, you're not my real dad. No, I killed your
real dad. I'm literally the only dad you're ever going to have now.
boy.
Unless somebody kills me. And
there's a flaw in your plan.
But good luck having somebody adopt you after they kill me. So there. You're gonna be adopted twice in your life.
Who wants to adopt a kid whose parents keep dying?
No, you're a second hand. You're third hand adoption. Nobody wants that. It's like you're the puppy who keeps getting returned to the adoption.
Yeah, just like that.
That's sad.
Except that the
Now I made
parents are
myself
getting
sad.
married.
Yeah.
Right.
So Macbeth really does this impressive thing of adopting this kid. That's a very rare thing, and he makes him his heir, which is a big deal. So now he is the Mormaer. He's in the prime of his life. He's about 30. He's ready to take the reins of power. Good for him.
Good for him.
So, at some point also, King Malcolm dies.
Natural causes?
Hold on. Let's see if I remember it. I believe he just got sick and died. He was a bit old.
Okay.
Now, he does not have a clear line of succession at this point.
He had all this time to
I
die.
know. It's kind of dumb. The whole thing with this is that there is it's patrilineal, so it's the father's side controls everything, right? The problem with this was that Duncan is connected to Malcolm on his mother's side, not his father's side. So that's a weaker claim.
Okay.
Whereas Macbeth, that's grandpa. That's straight up through the dad's side of the family.
Yeah.
He is technically the closest kin. But Macbeth does not immediately claim the throne. He doesn't say that he's content to be the Mormaer. He's powerful,
Or
he's wealthy.
Playing
he's
the waiting game.
Yep. Or he's playing the waiting game. He's independent. He pretty much has what he wants, and he doesn't really need the headache.
Yeah.
Duncan's rule is
More money, more
immediately
problems.
shaky. What this was called the patrilineal descent, they call that tanistry. It's the Scottish way of phrasing it, basically. But you're supposed to be able to trace your family line through your father's side to the king. It's supposed to go to the next boy in the line connected to the father.
Yeah.
So there's a thought that this is the end of tanistry in Scotland because Duncan steps in and he's like, aha, I'm going to be the king. but it's a really shaky claim. Now, Duncan's only about 30. He's a young man, contrary to the play Macbeth, where Duncan is elderly and frail.
Yeah.
Duncan is frail in, they think, mind and body, and that he's kind of weak. But usually, if you were considered an ineffective king back then, they would just say you were physically or mentally incapable. Yeah. And they would dogpile on it. You know, like, and it wasn't necessarily that he was this worthless king, but he's not great.
Okay.
So, Duncan the First, he's the first one of his kind that becomes king. He was born in 1001-ish, and he becomes king the 25th of November in 1034. Macbeth is referred to as a duke, or dukes. The dukes is the D-U-X is the Latin term for it.
Oh, wow.
This is a really high title. Like, there isn't anybody else in Scotland that's called that. It's a very rare title in that there were contemporary dukes who were actually more powerful than kings. Oh. In France, the guy who was referred to as the duke he was the mayor of the palace, and he was actually in more control of the throne than the king was. He had way more power. There was also a duke in, let's see if I wrote his name down. Probably not. There was a duke, though, at the time in England who was way more powerful than the king, and he was considered kind of a runaway powerhouse. It was a little much. So to be called a duke is a huge deal, and it's kind of an honorific given to him by other people.
Okay, well,
so
it's
that
not like an official title.
It's not really an official title, which kind of rubs the king the wrong way. Because he sees these other powerful dukes at the time in other countries who have more power than the king, and it's basically like saying you can't control your own noble, he's more powerful than you. Dang. And there's also this shaky connection to the throne already, and Macbeth having a better claim. So Duncan doesn't really like Macbeth. At the time, there's a fellow named Canute the Great. Canute the Great, who we've talked about. Canute the Great was the king of Norway, of Denmark, and of England at the time. He was a Viking. He's one of the most powerful kings throughout history. He was extremely well respected and very powerful. He was strong. He was smart.
He was great.
He was great. He earned the title. He went to Scotland to basically secure their submission. He's like, I can invade, or you just say that everything's good and you'll pay me basically a ransom to not burn you down.
Oh, nice.
Submission.
Works good for him.
When he's there, this is according to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle.
Get your Anglo-Saxon Chronicles.
Yep. So this, I have to go back a little bit before Duncan becomes king, because this is in 1031, so Macbeth is the mayor. Canute the Great wants submission in Scotland, and he goes to meet Malcolm II. And it describes that Malcolm was there with two other kings, Macbeth and, this is a hard one to say, Iehmarc. Yermak, I think. So the Chronicle refers to Macbeth as a king. That's how powerful he is. And Yermak is probably another mayor of the region.
Yeah, probably.
This is the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, so it's not written by a local guy. It's not written by a Scot. It's written by the Anglo-Saxons, who are the English.
Okay. He probably had a
so
tough
he's
time
like
saying that name too.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know. This looks right.
Throw some Scrabble tiles at.
Yep. So this is a big deal. The title, Mormaer, is Gaelic. So that's the same language that's spoken in Ireland. Slightly different in the Irish Gaelic and the Scots Gaelic. And then Earl is the term used in Scots, which is actually its own language. Because it's developed differently than English just enough. So, like, the way they spell things is different. Like, no is spelled N-A-E, and it's pronounced ne. Ne. So that accent of theirs is actually not just an accent, it's a language thing. So that's a big part of it. It's a very interesting thing. So that explains, like, the titles a little more clearly, I think, because I wanted to go into that because Earl and Mormaer were used interchangeably, and I was like, what? Are they the same thing? And they are the same thing. It's just a language thing. So this also proves Shakespeare's wrong, because at the end of Shakespeare, when the good guys beat Macbeth. Spoiler in Shakespeare, Macbeth is the villain.
Yeah.
Malcolm III proclaims that there will be earls made of all of these nobles, the first of their kind. That's not true. The earl has been around for a while. More mayors are earls. It's the same thing. So that's incorrect.
Artistic license.
Other artistic license is incorrect. Duncan is not old.
Yeah.
Okay. So now
you write a play.
I can't. I mean, I
Well, there we
could, but
go.
I wouldn't make. I could write a play, but it wouldn't necessarily be good, and it probably won't hold up to Shakespeare.
Okay.
There's a reason why Shakespeare's version of it is different, and I'll get to that at the end.
Oh, go ahead.
So, Duncan's
Copyright
rule, like we
reasons.
said, is shaky, and Macbeth is really powerful. We've got all these people talking about how like Macbeth was kind of a big deal, and even before Duncan was king, they were comparing him to kingship. They were like, "This is a big deal."
It's a big.
Now here we get a fun little Viking saga bit.
Hey, little Viking side
love
story.
I love my Vikings, and they've had an interaction already with Canute the Great. At this time, Thorfinn the Mighty.
Thorfinn.
Thorfinn the Mighty. Thorfinn. They don't pronounce the H, but Thorfinn the Mighty. I just made it very Thorfinn the Mighty.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the Earl, another Earl, of Orkney. The Orkney Islands are in the north of Scotland and the east of Scotland, and they are an ideal landing point for Vikings. They sail there, they live there, eventually they grew a culture there, and then, so nowadays, like, there are descendants of Vikings that still live in Scotland. It's this whole thing.
Yeah.
So they settle there, and they're fierce warriors, and they become eventually landed nobility that are part of the Kingdom of Scotland. Thorfinn has his own saga. It's part of the entire saga of the Orkney Islands, and Thorfinn's a real guy.
Thorfinn.
Who's called the Mighty because he was apparently really, really, really strong. Like, freakishly, you know, those types of people where you're like, how are you that strong? And he's just really, really strong. Of course, in the saga, they overblow a little bit. You know, he's bending iron bars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
Mighty.
he had, according to this, his mom, this is a big deal, is one of Malcolm's daughters. So he's actually related to King Malcolm as well.
Oh, okay. So you have right to the
He's
throne?
Malcolm's grandson, but through a woman. So he's got the same level of claim to the throne as Duncan does.
Right. Worked for him.
Yeah, it worked for him. In his saga, he describes that he has an enemy named Carl Hundison, which is like Carl, like the dog. Hundison is a dog, like the son of the dog. He's a cur, he's a scumbag.
Man.
So even his name is insulting. There is no Scotsman named Carl Hundison. There's no Scotsman named Carl, and there's certainly no Scot with the last name Hundison. They're not sure exactly who he is. They think it's one of two people. Again, this is tricky. And this also might not be real because there aren't a lot of Scots records of this campaign against each other.
Who's this guy named Carl?
According to them, Carl is Duncan.
A student, like he's.
It's just their Viking name that they give for him. It's their Norse name they gave him. Sure. They give him this insulting name.
Yeah, it doesn't sound complimentary at all.
The other thought is maybe it was Macbeth, but Macbeth is recorded that this is before Macbeth is even vying for kingship. That this apparently happened. But there was a campaign against the Orkneys, and the Scots got their butts kicked. It was really one-sided, and there was a lot of fighting, and it was a disastrous campaign. And this Carl Hundison was sent packing, and it made him look weak. Now, Duncan, at this exact time, is being challenged by all of these other nobles who start to rally around Macbeth, and they're like, why don't you vie for the kingship? Duncan's not a great king, and I think if this actually happened, if the saga is accurate, my interpretation of it would be that Duncan led a campaign north to rid the Scots of, their Viking scourge, and kind of as an act of nationalism and showing that he's the big guy, he's the new boss. And it went miserably, and it made him look weak, and that contributes to his kind of downfall in the eyes of his fellow Scots. Another thing that happened at the time is then in 1039, Duncan led a campaign into Durham, which is in England at the time. It's English controlled. And it was this big raid, and it went horribly wrong. And again, he got crushed and sent back. So he keeps losing credibility. He keeps losing power. He keeps losing soldiers. So
is it worth it?
Yeah, it's not great. And the rest of the nobles, especially all the Mormaers, are like, this is bad. This guy's an idiot, and he's going to ruin our country.
Yeah.
So they are this Viking saga. If it happened, I think most likely happened with Duncan. I don't think it happened with Macbeth because Macbeth is a rising star at this point, and Duncan is a falling one. So that's my thinking.
Yeah.
I just like to incorporate this because I thought it was really cool that Thorfinn talks about some guy who did not exist. But if he did, he's the name that he gave to Duncan, and he basically calls the guy a dog, which I think is hilarious.
Carl the dog.
Carl the dog. Carl the cur. Not even a nice dog.
Sure.
It's like cur. It's like a cruddy, awful dog that nobody likes.
Aw.
Cur. Like, yeah, I feel bad for a dog that's a cur, but not a human that's a cur. You know, then it's a
Curs need love too.
It's a really, really insulting name.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Put together, it's like the sum of all its parts are actually worse than what the actual pieces mean. So Duncan is basically on the ropes. He's getting pummeled on all sides. He's ineffective. He also starts making people angry because of his taxing, and he's money
don't
for
get
the
the crowd
war.
against you.
So now you've got he just basically insulted everybody, and he's making everybody mad. So Macbeth is like, this guy sucks, and he's kind of more public about it. So Duncan decides, I'm going to nip this in the bud, and he invades Mornay. Or Moray. Not Mornay.
It's a hard place to get to.
It's a hard place to get to.
Hard
Apparently
to
a
invade.
hard thing to say.
Yeah.
So he invades. Which is a great idea. Because he's already, he's been winning so much, and he's clearly a great campaigner. At the Battle of Pitgavney, which we don't have a lot of details about, Duncan leads his army in. It's a few hundred soldiers, probably all foot troops, because Scotland is not good for cavalry. It's just terrible for it.
Yeah.
And it's a very one-sided whooping. Like, Macbeth crushes his army. And Duncan is either killed in battle or dies shortly after from his wounds.
Oh.
So another thing that's different than the Scottish play is that Duncan is not murdered. And he and Macbeth are never friends. There is no loyalty there. This guy is a bad king. He's not a kind king. He's not a most sainted king, as is said in the story.
And he started the fight.
Macbeth did not invade. Macbeth never left his country. Macbeth never said, I hate you, I'm going to be the king. Macbeth, and this is according to 3 sources, 2 different chronicles. There's the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, I forget to write down the other chronicle, and then this prophecy, which we don't take for...
prophecy?
There's a prophecy.
From witches?
Yes, from a witch.
There's something he got right.
Yeah, that one he did get right. But that one is not considered a really reliable source because it's kind of fictitious, and I think it was written after the fact, or something like that, written after the fact.
More exciting, though.
But it is much more exciting to have a prophecy.
Sure.
Especially since there are so few prophecies. Now, that's a pretty cool one.
Yeah, they're easy to write if you write them after the fact.
Yes, those are the best ones. Will buy a coffee today. Ooh. Oh my God, it happened. How did he know? Prophecy. So this is a bad day for Duncan. Duncan's dead now, or dying at the battle, and then he dies. Immediately after now, you keep what you kill, and Macbeth is king of Scotland.
Yay.
And everybody is actually quite happy with this arrangement. He's stronger. He's actually a little older than Duncan. He's considered more reliable. And he's definitely more successful. So he's popular.
All right.
He doesn't do a lot to make problems. He doesn't make waves. He's a waveless king. Although he is called the Red King by some people, which is interesting. So he might have had a red beard, or because he was really good at violence.
Could have been.
But he doesn't do any kind of punitive measures to murder Duncan's family, although Duncan's wife and her kids run away. And he has at least 2 sons, Malcolm and Donalbain.
Yeah. I'd run away too.
Featured in the thing. Now, There is one other person that doesn't like Macbeth at all. His name is Crinan.
Crinan?
Crinan. Crinan is Duncan's dad, and he is an abbot. He's the abbot of Dunkeld.
Oh, okay.
Now, abbots are powerful people. The abbeys are gathering points. So this is a time, and this would never happen nowadays, but this is a time when the church basically would sell offices. You would pay to be a priest or a higher priest if you were a priest already, to be a bishop. Being an abbot is a big deal because abbeys they don't have to pay taxes. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
They're allowed to have market days, and they get to take money from those markets. So this is a profitable enterprise. This is a very wealthy man. And wealthy men at the time hire soldiers because they need them.
Sure.
They also tend to buy more
protect all
land.
your stuff.
Yeah, you got to protect. The more stuff you have, the more you need to protect it.
Yeah.
It's kind of good to not have a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And at any point, really, I don't know. I'm not a person who thinks got to have stuff.
Sure.
But this guy had stuff,
Had
and
stuff.
he's really mad that his son died. And he's lost a lot of clout now because, well, my son's not the king anymore, so I can't just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Boo-hoo.
Boo-hoo.
So he starts to kind of foment rebellion. He's like, yeah, I don't like this guy. Anybody else feel the same? And he gets some followers to join him.
Sure. Well, he's an abbot.
He's an abbot.
Probably good at getting followers.
At the sermons.
Yeah. One last
And-
message. How about this guy?
How about this guy? Instead of paying a tithe today, you can just help me fight Macbeth. Well, he gets some support. And of course,
See you next Sunday.
Macbeth can't sit there and let anybody stir up a rebellion against him. That's bad.
Yeah.
Rebellion bad.
Sure.
Right? Especially when it's just over, but it's over a family thing, and it's over the death of the son, so he's not going to stop. There's no talking to this guy. There's no negotiating with him, so they go to war.
Yeah.
At the Battle of Dunkeld, Crinan is killed, along with his other son, Maldred. Maldred's a cool name. It's like Mordred. It's
Maldred.
He's like, Maldred, that's just bad and scary. Because Mal is bad and Dread is it's Maldred. Okay, yep, you're bad, scary guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, it's a Scottish name, so it doesn't mean any of those.
Sure,
things.
sure.
But I like the Latin version. That's a terrifying name.
Yeah, Maldred.
Maldred. So the Battle of Dunkeld, Macbeth puts down this rebellion, and he has basically saved his kingdom.
Sure. And also killed an abbot.
And he killed an abbot, so now he has to establish a new abbot. Which he
Who
does.
wants this job?
Yep.
We'll clean up the...
There's a line probably around the building.
Yeah.
I want the job because it's still profitable.
Yeah.
We just,
Just don't foment rebellion.
don't foment rebellion, and I think we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. All right. So, Crinan's gone. Macbeth's power is secure again.
Yep.
It's 1045. Marion Scotus, so this is a monk, and took on the name of Marion because he's one of the Marian order.
Okay.
And Scotus is the Scot of the Scot.
Thanks.
He writes in the Chronicle Clara, that's the other chronicle,
Chronicle Clark.
that Macbeth makes a pilgrimage to Rome in 1050. A bad king does not do that. A weak king cannot go and leave and go on a pilgrimage. So what a pilgrimage is, for those who don't know, the concept of it is you go to a holy place to pray, and you go, if you're a king, you don't go with your fancy clothes, you don't go with a big army, you don't go... It's not about you showing your power, it's about you showing humility and putting forth the effort to basically walk to a holy site. The most hardcore of the pilgrims would basically wear like a burlap sack and a rope around the waist and go barefoot until they got there. And you were not supposed to mess with pilgrims or hermits or people like that. Even like bandits and brigands didn't hassle these people because, first of all, they have nothing, typically. They have enough to get there, and they have food.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Enough to buy some souvenirs.
They might have some stuff for souvenirs. Now, apparently, though, Macbeth did bring money. Because while he was there, he handed out, it's described as, he handed out coins like seed.
Oh.
It was like he was just to the poor. He was just handing out money to the poor. Which is another big deal,
nice.
is
Sure,
to give if you have. So he didn't go there and, like, demand stuff from the Pope. He didn't make a big splashy entrance other than he went there as a hermit and gave money to the poor people, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
So we can assume from this that this is not the act of a tyrant. This is not the act of an evil person.
Yeah.
This is the act of a genuine
Man, how did Macbeth's PR team work? They got such a...
Well,
We'll get there.
we'll get there. So he's he's well respected. He's doing a really good job, evidently. For 10 years, he was king, and no problems. If you're able to leave your country unattended and walk to Rome,
Yeah.
you're doing a good job. You're doing all right. There aren't a lot of kings who do that. Normally, they would just go on crusade, and then they have an army of death with them, and they just cut everybody down. In 1052, though, there's some stuff going on in England that is a little shaky.
Uh-oh.
There are Normans,
Mm-hmm.
so we know who the Normans are. They invaded, eventually, England.
Yeah.
And they're in the royal court at the time. Now, because of rising hostilities and a shift in who's the king, because I believe Edward died, so now there is Edward the Confessor dies. Now there's Godwinson, I think, is the king. But whatever. There's this king in England, and he does not want any Normans involved in his court. He doesn't want them there. They're foreigners. He doesn't like their having any power or authority, so he kicks them out. Well, Macbeth accepts them as exiles
what a
in
guy.
court. This is not a great political move. It's seen as
Bad move.
it's seen as him showing favor to England's enemies.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is used as a pretext for this, but the English decide to invade Scotland.
No.
It's the whole thing. Now, also at this time, Malcolm and Donalbain are in England or possibly Ireland.
Yeah.
But their mother is like trying to get support to put her boy on the throne so that she can get back to Scotland and then also restore the throne to
It's always
her
about
family.
you, Mom.
Yep. So she's probably the entire time that Macbeth is in Scotland being king, she's like, look what he did to my boys.
Sure.
So she's driving a wedge between England and Scotland. And I think this accepting the exiles is a problem.
Yeah.
And they do not like this. So a fellow named Seward, who is a character in Macbeth, gathers an army together. It is not 10,000 men. There is no way they would rally 10,000 men to go north into Scotland. They just don't have the numbers. When the Norman invasion happens in 1066, the biggest army they could muster together is about 6,000 men. So there's no way they can have 10,000 men go into the north. So it's another license with the numbers.
Sure.
Seward goes north, and at the Battle of Dunsinane, which is a hill.
Yeah.
Dunsinane Hill is mentioned in Macbeth. There is no mention of bringing Birnam Wood to Dunsinane in the historical chronicles. They may have marched from Birnam Wood to Dunsinane Hill.
Yeah. There's a Birnam Wood, though.
There is a Birnam Wood.
There you go.
So Seward invades with his army. He loses about 1,000 guys in the Battle of Dunsinane. Macbeth loses 1,500. The numbers could be more, they could be less. He loses.
Yeah.
Macbeth loses. Now, Macbeth does not die at Dunsinane.
Okay.
Macbeth's wife does not kill herself.
Oh.
She's kind of a non-entity in the history. She's not considered a madwoman. His son Lulach does not die. But Macbeth is kind of driven back because he's lost.
Back to Moray?
Back to Moray, probably.
Yeah.
But he's kind of has to bounce around now.
Uh-oh.
Now, the seat of at the time, I should have written it down, is not Edinburgh, which is where the head of Scotland lives nowadays. And also at this time, most kingdoms, the king travels. They hold court wherever they feel like it. So it's not like they took the capital city and that was at Dunsinane. That was just where the battle took place.
Right.
So, and he probably ruled from Moray for most of the time because that's his power base. That's where all his money comes from. That's where all his friends are. That's where his most loyal subjects are going to be, and that's his home.
Yeah.
This battle doesn't go well. The English are pretty thorough. They don't do like a... This isn't like in Braveheart where the English just start, rampaging and pillaging and killing everybody. This is a political thing where they're trying to dethrone the king and replace him. But for 3 years, Macbeth clings to life. He's still the king.
Yep.
He's still in charge.
You said clings to life. Was he injured?
He wasn't. He might have been injured, but I mean clings to life like he clings to power.
I see.
He's still able to hang on, and he's still able to rule things, and he's still able to be the king.
Yeah.
So that means it's not a complete and total destructive victory for the English. But they beat his army, and now he's kind of on the back foot. There were probably some skirmishes, and then at a lesser battle, the Battle of Lumphanan, Macbeth gets ambushed and he gets killed.
Oh, that's such an unfortunately named battle.
In Lumphanan, and then he dies. Gets his lumps at Lumphanan.
Oh, sorry.
So
Beth.
Macbeth rules for 17 years. The play Macbeth makes it seem like he has a very short reign.
Sure.
Relatively short.
Yeah.
And it's bloody and savage and awful.
Yeah.
But we know from 2 Chronicles and a prophecy, I think there's even a 3rd Chronicle that might have been in there, but I only know of the Clara and the Anglo-Saxon. But those speak to him being a good king.
Yeah.
All the local records speak of him being
Nice enough guy, throwing out
nice
money.
enough guy. He gave
Like fighting defensive battles.
mostly fighting defensive battles, not invading other countries.
Yeah.
Seems to get along with his
Yeah.
people inside his country. Has to fight, put down a rebellion, but if he didn't, the guy would just have burned the whole country to the ground
Sure.
in revenge for his son.
He seems nice and almost not noteworthy at all. Really.
Really, he's not. This is a surprisingly small episode because
Sure.
there's not a ton about him, and if he was this monster, there would be so much information.
Sure.
The worse you are, or if you're doing all these great battles or all this other stuff, the bigger deal you are. And
Yeah.
those people are usually kind of the bastards of history. The most famous people in history are not usually good people at
Yeah.
this point. They're warmongers. But like you said, he's not really noteworthy except for his pilgrimage, putting down a rebellion, and being a man of peace,
Yeah.
which is boring historically.
Yeah.
So,
And dramatically.
a different history was written like 500 years later.
Oh.
I'm going to pull it up because I forgot it. So I did all my research for this last week and I forgot some little bits. It doesn't matter. The point being, see, I have plenty of time, so I could just look it up. The historian who wrote this later history
Yeah.
bases it on the opinions of survivors
Oh.
and the winners. So they all paint Macbeth as a tyrant and a monster.
Oh.
None of it is historically accurate. Now here's another little wrinkle. After Macbeth dies, Malcolm does not become king. Macbeth's successor becomes king, his adopted son,
Yeah.
Lulach,
Mm.
who rules for about a week.
Oh, that's a short reign.
And Malcolm assassinates him.
Yeah, boy.
He has him murdered.
Okay.
And that's the end of Macbeth's line.
Yikes.
Like, because Macbeth didn't have any other kids.
Yep.
So this not bad guy gets power by he rises up from the ashes of his father being murdered, literally burns his enemy to death. Or maybe he didn't. He might not have even done that. He might not have done any kind of aggressive acts because he would have had to wait like 30 years to strike back for his father's death.
Yeah.
And or 10 years from when his dad died, but that's possibly not what happened, and it might have been Malcolm who had him killed because Malcolm was a king and you don't mess with the king because well, you just don't.
He's
but,
the king, yeah.
But he might have been lashing out because his brother got killed, and so for all we know, Macbeth did not ever attack anybody first. He fought defensive battles, like you
Sure.
said, but he might have never had a cool revenge story or anything like that. He might have just been some Mormaer's son who had an unfortunate childhood and then grew into a powerful man who other people supported and really wanted to be king, and they were really happy about it, and it was foreign invaders who deposed him. And then when Malcolm got the throne, or wanted the throne, and he saw it within his reach, he murders basically a kid.
So Malcolm's a bad guy.
Malcolm's kind of a bad guy. Malcolm III winds up having a very, very long reign. I think it's a 50-year reign.
Yikes.
Something like that. It's ludicrously long reign.
Yeah.
But here's where we talk about the play versus this reality. So in the play, Macbeth starts out as he's a Thane, which is not a Scottish title. That's a Viking title of Cawdor. He's the Mormaer. He's the Earl of Moray.
Yep.
And he got that without Duncan. He got that on his own. He was born to it, lost it, and got it back. So that was his. He was not given that. Again, Macbeth is portrayed as a great warrior, which from what we know, he could fight. He was able to win most of the battles he fought. It was only when he was badly outnumbered and then got ambushed. Those are the 2 battles he lost, and the battles he loses are the ones that matter the most.
That's true.
They typically get you killed.
Yeah.
But his rival, or the guy he replaces, is Duncan, who's seen as this old, kindly, gentle, sainted king. And he's none of those things. Nobody in Scotland really liked him. Like, he had some followers. He had his dad. He had his brothers. But he is not this well-respected king who everybody worships. There was no battle that is known of where there was a big rebellion and Duncan fought it, and then the Norse come in from the Orkney Islands. But that is a reference to the Viking saga as well.
Oh, okay.
They talk about that at the beginning of Macbeth, that there's this battle, and they're fighting against these northern invader types who are probably the Orkney Vikings.
Yep.
And then they get stabbed in the back by a different noble, and then Macbeth kills everybody. Well, Duncan lost that war.
Okay.
So that's a myth. That didn't happen. Macbeth was not given a new title by the king, ever. He earned everything he had, like we said. And Macbeth, when he finally does become king, it wasn't because he murdered the previous king. The previous king invaded his land and tried to murder him.
Yeah.
And he fought him on the battlefield and won. And then everybody was like...
So still killed him.
He still killed him. He might not have killed him directly.
Yeah.
He was probably fighting. Because this was the time where, if you're a warrior, if you're a lord, you're fighting.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the rules. You have to.
Sure.
Unless you're older or you have some kind of infirmity, then you're allowed. There are times where it's, he's a really brilliant tactician, don't let him near the field. He's terrible at fighting.
Right.
Or if you're a king, sometimes you don't fight. But
if you're a lazy king.
If you're a lazy king. But Macbeth fought.
Yeah.
And he beat him.
Yeah.
Fair and square, defensive battle, then Duncan dies. When Macbeth takes over, people are happy about it. They're the majority of the nobles supported Macbeth, and that's why Duncan attacked him in the first place. Macbeth did not do any kind of tyrannical, sneaky assassination thing. He certainly wasn't motivated to do anything by his wife, who he apparently loved, but they never had kids. So he probably could not have kids, because we know she can. The fact that he adopted her child is a huge thing, and Lulach is not even mentioned in the play Macbeth, although they do talk about Lady Macbeth says that she has given suck to a babe.
Sure.
So she knows that she's had children. In one horrible version of it, in a film, they try to suggest that they lost their baby, and they show them burying the child at the beginning, and that's like the whole point of the story is they've both been driven a little mad because they recently lost a child, but that did not happen that we know of.
But most of the play didn't happen, it sounds like.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's see where we're... Macbeth, during his reign in the play, he is written off as a bloody-handed tyrant he was an untitled king, meaning like the people didn't choose him, which, by the way, the people don't choose the king anyway. It's not like it's an election. He had a better claim to the throne than Duncan ever did, according to Scottish tradition, according to Tanistry, but he didn't try to take it. So he just kind of had it thrust upon him, and then Duncan took it badly and died. We do know that Malcolm and Donalbain fled. Now, they would not have been adults at this point. They were kids. They were fled with their mom.
So they didn't flee on their own.
They did not go, we are out.
We are kids.
We are 5, and we are gone. So mom takes the whole family, basically. He's like, I don't know what this guy's going to do. I'm going to run away.
Sure.
There's nothing to indicate that Macbeth would have killed them. He already didn't kill the family of the people who killed his family.
Look at all the people I haven't killed.
Look at everybody I haven't killed. Why would you think I would kill
most people? Really, statistically,
most people.
Yeah.
Maybe I set a fire. We're not sure about that one. But it could have been lightning.
Sure.
It could have been
lightning.
Act of God.
Yeah. Bad wiring.
Bad wiring in the Middle Ages.
Yep.
Which is the worst kind of
probably
wiring.
really bad,
It's really, really bad. They just basically throw a bunch of wires on top of it.
If we ever get electricity in here, fellas, we're in trouble.
We're in trouble.
This wiring.
Where's that fire marshal again? It's a good thing he died in the last fire. So Macbeth, we know, is, like you said, he's kind of a boring king.
Yeah.
There's not a lot written about him. So this idea that in the play the sky is black and misery reigns supreme because he is this awful monster and everything goes crazy and terrible. Obviously not. It's considered a good enough place that when the Normans want to leave England, they are invited into his court. Like, yeah, this sounds great.
Sure.
They could have gone back to Normandy, where they're from, which is nice. That's the coastal France. It's beautiful there. And they're like, oh no, we'll go to Scotland. That sounds great.
Good golfing.
Good golfing. Maybe. But, so he's not this bloody-handed tyrant. He's not this monster.
Yeah.
And then 10 years into his reign, he leaves to go on a pilgrimage. And in the play, he's portrayed as this godless monster who's just, he betrays his king, he betrays and murders his best friend, he has children massacred, he has entire families put to the sword, castles burned to the ground.
It's an exciting play, folks.
It's really exciting play. And it's great drama, but it is 100% fictional account of who this Macbeth guy was. Then, after all of this, when Malcolm eventually has his expert swordsman soldier guy, Macduff, who's not a real person, he fights Macbeth because Macbeth kills his family. He kills Macbeth, avenging them. It's a great scene. And the tyrant's put down, and Malcolm becomes king. Also not true. Malcolm does not become king immediately after Macbeth dies. Also, Macbeth doesn't die at Dunsinane. Macbeth lives for 3 more years after this climactic battle of Dunsinane, and then dies in battle. But at least they got that right. Macbeth does die in battle. He does not die a coward. He doesn't run away. He's a warrior to the end. So that's something, I guess, that they got right. Who does take over, like we talked about, is Lulak. And Lulak is kind of he's kind of considered this unfortunate character in history. Because, first of all, he was maybe simple. They're not sure.
Okay.
But that could also be the guys who won the war just trying to make them look bad. Kind of like how they referred to Macbeth as the Red, as if he was this savage killing machine, and he wasn't, that we know of, a savage murderer. So Lulak reigns for a couple days, and Malcolm murders him. So Malcolm is portrayed as this kind of, he's clever, and he knows that in the play Macbeth is trying to kill him, so he uses like lots of wordplay and describes himself as this horrible person, trying to test Macduff to see if Macduff will actually be loyal to him, and then he reveals, actually, I'm a good person, and I don't have all these bad things about me, and I'm going to be a good king. I was just testing you. Macduff's elated, and then they go and they fight this battle, and they kill Macbeth. But we know that Malcolm was a backstabbing murderer and a bit of a bastard, because he assassinated somebody who was, even in their version of it, described as like a simpleton. So he just murders this poor guy who's never did anything to anybody except be adopted.
Yeah.
And
he wasn't even born right.
He wasn't even born for this. Like, he just got murdered. So Malcolm, the reason why this is done is because later on, Malcolm's descendant is James the Sixth, who becomes James the First and Sixth of England, who we've talked about.
Yeah.
Remember the gunpowder plot and all that jazz?
Badly named James.
Badly named James. Badly named Jim.
Badly titled, I guess.
Badly titled Jim.
Yeah.
Bad title Jim. So what was going on at the time is Shakespeare, bit of a famous guy, maybe you've heard of. William Shakespeare was writing plays. Yeah. For the longest time, he wrote plays for Queen Elizabeth. When Elizabeth was going to die, she knew she was dying, she was old, she chose as her successor her nephew, James. James is Scottish. He's already the king of Scotland, and she did this specifically to unite England and Scotland together forever.
Forever.
That was her plan. So
you hear that,
Shakespeare
Scotland? Forever.
wrote a really flattering play about King James's ancestor, Malcolm, to make him seem like he was this heroic figure, and the guy that he usurped power from was a monster and a bastard, which is basically how Shakespeare writes a lot of his plays is to color the enemies of the Tudor family as monsters. Richard III is done like this, where Richard III, they don't actually know if he did all of these horrible things that he's accused of, but they're sure going to paint it like he did because Elizabeth's family won that war.
Yeah.
So he's not going to, and he wants money from them. He does not want to look like he's taking, liberties and being kind to the enemies of the royals who are running the show at the time and who have no problem just decapitating people. They don't have a problem killing Catholics when the Protestants are in charge, and when the Catholics are in charge, they have no problem killing Protestants. So Shakespeare has to walk this fine line.
You didn't like the third act?
This isn't like a condemnation of Shakespeare. I think this is just a politically savvy writer who took some liberties with some things. And he did base his play on one of the historical accounts, but that historical account was written hundreds of years after the fact.
Was that actually it wasn't necessarily Shakespeare doing it, but
no, this other guy wrote it, and Shakespeare's like, well, all these other versions say that didn't happen, but here's a juicy one. I'm going to write a nice play about it. And Macbeth is a very compelling tragedy as a result of that. It's a very interesting play. It's very, very well written. It's fun and exciting. It's almost an action movie compared to some of the other plays because it's shorter. It's the shortest tragedy, as was explained to us by our director, Carolyn. Thanks for that information. I didn't know that. Even without editing or anything, it's the fastest one. That's why it makes for like great movies.
Yeah.
It's fast, and it has this rising building action and this climactic battle, and that's great. But the history of it is much more complex than that. And like you said, it's really interesting to me that Macbeth is just kind of a milquetoast king. He's not a monster. Like he's not a great king, because at the time being a great king means you have to go and murder people and fight big battles, and that makes you great.
All the effort.
But honestly, if this was my king nowadays, you'd be pretty happy with that.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, we have prosperity and we have so much peace that you can just leave for months to go on a pilgrimage. That's pretty cool. But it's not spicy. It's not as entertaining. And yeah, so this was definitely written as like a propaganda piece, basically, to James to say, hey, your ancestor was pretty awesome. No. And even within the play, there's a part where Macbeth is shown a mirror, basically, or a glass, and at least in our version, there's a glass, and he talks about how he can see this line of kings.
Yeah.
Originally, there's supposed to be all these apparitions that like walk on, but then he says, and what's this I see? And it's this endless line of kings that just keep going and going and going, because Malcolm's family line through marriage and other connections. It's not like a straight line, because there's all these marriages that happen, and it's the Middle Ages and stuff gets a little wonky. But he is connected through this weavy tapestry back to Malcolm and Duncan. So that's Macbeth. And I did that in record time.
Well, look at that.
That's all I got. I wanted more, because I was like, this is going to be super compelling, and the real Macbeth's going to be super interesting, and he's a good king.
Yeah, nice guy, got a bad rap.
Got a bad rap. Yeah. So yeah, don't believe the hype. Fake news. Macbeth was actually a pretty all right guy. He's a pretty good king.
Well, yes. Don't believe necessarily all the history. Make sure you know who writes history. But do support local theater.
Do support local theater. Yeah, this is not a condemnation of the play. Remember, plays are supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be exciting. This would be the most boring play ever. Oh. Like, really, if it was just Macbeth's life, they'd be like, it's 17 years of peace. Like, aw.
It's a 17-hour-long play.
Yep. You get a little action in the beginning if you give him the revenge story that he killed his uncle after his uncle killed his dad. Yeah, and there's a little bit where he fights Duncan, and then there's a little bit where he fights the rebellion, and then there's the battles at the end. But it's really long gaps of peace in between all of this craziness.
Well, there we go.
There you go. That's Macbeth.
All right. Well, thanks, Will.
Thanks, Mike.
I learned some things. Yeah. I don't know which one's true now, because they both seem true. I guess that's how history works.
This is true.
Sure.
The other one is not.
I guess I'll take your word for it, because you're alive.
All right. You could just go read the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle.
So, if you have any comments or corrections, put those in the comment section below.
And if you know Scottish really well, or know where I can look to pronounce some of these names, because they're really tricky, and I tried not to butcher them too badly, but it's really
you probably have to pronounce things from the different part of your throat.
Yep.
Well. Either way, comment, like, and subscribe, obviously.
Yep.
And that was what was the actual date? Macbeth.
It was 14 August 1040. That is when Duncan dies.
Oh, okay. So when he.
Yep, that's the Battle of
becomes-
Pitgevney.
Okay.
There's another name for that battle too. There's like so many different names for some of these things, but that was when he becomes king.
Got it. All right. We'll be doing this again next week, and we're going to be discussing the death of William Wallace.
Sticking in Scotland, but we're going ahead 300 years.
Okay.
Ish.
So 300 short years later.
Yep.
Well, you don't have to wait that long.
Nope.
You can wait
A week.
or so,
Ish.
depending on if we get our act together.
We got to get our act together. So yeah, that's 23rd August 1305.
All right. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Thanks.